Welcome to the Producing Dubstep with Logic Pro Stock Plugins introduction. So I'm just going to go over a few things that will be helpful in order to be successful in this class. So first, you're going to want a basic music theory understanding. You don't need a degree in music theory or anything, but it will be helpful to know about key, so what key you're in, scales and stuff, which brings me to scales and melody. And we will work on writing melodies in this course, and then using chords and harmonies to enrich the sound in those melodies, and then rhythm. Okay, now if you've done any music production or messed around, then you probably have experienced some or all of these. And I will explain everything I'm doing in terms of key, scales, chords, and rhythm, but it will help to have a basic understanding of that. It'll also be helpful to have a basic understanding of how to use Logic Pro. That includes using keyboard commands, accessing the mixer, the MIDI roll, adding a plugin, using audio files, the drummer track, audio tracks, and MIDI tracks. Okay, and I'm going to explain everything that I do, but it might be a little bit hard if you have no idea what you're doing in terms of Logic Pro stuff. So having a basic understanding of Logic Pro is going to be very helpful. I want to mention that not all tracks are created equally. The way that I create this track might not necessarily be the exact way that I create other tracks. I'm specifically going in an order that I prepared for this track that I'm creating, but most tracks I actually am a little bit looser and kind of mess around. So just because I'm creating this track this way doesn't mean that you need to create every single track that way. So the specific course order is, first we're going to go over the drums, then we're going to write a melody, and then we're going to use the drums and the melody to create an introduction. And then with that introduction, we're going to create a build-up, okay? And then we're going to work on the drop. And then once we have that, we basically have all of the elements we're going to need. So then we're going to go over our final track structure. So that'll include the second drop and then just kind of making every single section of the track work out smoothly. And then we'll do our final organization and mixing. And then the last step is mastering. So the last thing I'm going to go over before we actually get to starting the track is my recommended Logic Pro setup and template. So we want to make sure our advanced features are turned on. We want to customize our control bar to what we want. We want to start with one audio track, no buses, and we're going to save that template. So I'm going to go over how to do that right now. So right now I've opened Logic Pro and I'm on new project. So I want to do empty project, and they've gotten a lot better over the years of making their empty project actually empty instead of kind of spoon feeding you this certain way that I found was a little annoying. So I'm going to open this empty project, and it's going to ask me for an audio track. Now I want to do audio, and I'll do no input, but you can start with the MIDI as well. I'm going to go full screen here. Now what I like to do is just customize the LCD display. So I'm going to click this right here and customize control bar and display. Then I want to make sure that I have everything on. Yours might look different than mine because this is saved. Okay, so for views right here, that's up here. I don't really push these buttons, but they're not really in the way. So I don't really touch these. Transport, same thing, that's right here. I'm not going to touch that either because I use the keyboard commands, which I'll explain. LCD is what I like to go over. So the positions I like, that's right here. And then the BPM or tempo. So if I turn that off, you see that went away. I definitely want that. And then the time signature division. Well, you can have that, but for the music that we're making, we're always going to have 4/4. I just have it on, but you don't need it on. Key signature project end, you can turn that on or you can keep it off. I typically have it off, but the one thing is if you're going to use any of the Apple loops, sometimes they have the key signature in a certain way where it messes with the audio. And there are ways around that, but if you want it on and want to set your key signature, that actually might be useful. So we can keep that on. And then performance meter. So that's how your computer's doing. If your computer's older, this might be more important. And I'll show you some ways around getting over a slower computer. I've produced a lot of, in my opinion, great tracks on some pretty mediocre to old computers, and there are ways to do it. And then this stuff I leave the same. You are going to want count in and click, especially if you are going to be recording any actual like audio, or even for MIDI, it's useful. So I think right now we're good. And yeah, master volume you can have on. You'll also be able to see that right here. This is your master volume here. So I'm going to do this. And what I want to do now is I'm going to set my BPM. And for this dubstep track that we're going to make, it's going to be 150 beats per minute. And you can set it for anything, because the next thing that we're going to do is save this as a template. So I'm going to save this as a template. So go to File, Save as Template, and I will call this blank 150 BPM. Okay. Now the next thing I want to make sure that we have is our advanced features on. So if you go to Logic Pro, Preferences, and Advanced, we want this button checked, Enable Complete Features, okay? Because if you don't hit this, then there might be some stuff that you see me doing, but you can't see on your screen because this is not enabled. I don't like the way that they kind of have this off by default. Now, I'm saying this because I haven't really had to turn this on since I got Logic Pro X, which was a while back. But make sure this is on in order to access all of the advanced features, because we are going to be using basically all of these. Maybe not the score editor, but everything else. So the last thing we're just going to check, just to make sure that yours and mine are basically the same, is we're going to check the mixer to make sure that there's no buses that might be messing with any sound that we're going over. So to get to the mixer, at least on my keyboard, it's X, okay? Or you can hit View, and then right here, Show Mixer. Yep, mine's X. And if you see any other tracks here besides our one audio track and then stereo out and then the master, then that might be a bus. So you just want to delete those. To delete the track, you can just click on it and then hit the delete key. But I'm not going to do that. And then we should be good. So you probably should have saved your template once you're completely done. But at that point, I knew I was completely done. But yeah, so now once you have this template, you'll be in great shape to be successful in this course.